everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing my spoiler-free review of Hunger of the Gods, the sequel to Shadow of the Gods, which was one of my top reads of 2021. These books are part of the Bloodsworn trilogy by John Gwynne, who's most well known for The Faithful and the Fallen, and Of Blood and Bone trilogy, which I have not read. Shadow of the Gods was actually the first arc I ever received last year, and I read it and I absolutely loved it. I went out and bought a physical copy of Shadow of the Gods. I mean, look at that cover. I mean, this is an amazing cover. I don't have the physical version of Hunger of the Gods, so that's why I'm holding up Shadow of the Gods. But yeah, this is one of my favorite covers of all time, and Hunger of the Gods also has a fantastic cover. So I am going to keep this spoiler-free from Hunger of the Gods, and even Shadow of the Gods I'm going to largely leave unspoiled. I won't be mentioning any character names or any major plot points throughout the first book. I will say that in Shadow of the Gods we follow three main characters in this Norse-inspired world where the gods have had their version of Ragnarok, where they have fought and died, and now descendants of the gods are enslaved and called tainted, and they are used for their magic but are basically considered not people, and they're feared and people are disgusted by them, and they're considered lower class citizens. And so we follow these three storylines that don't connect at all to begin with, and you follow the journeys of these three characters, two of which are young warriors and mercenary type groups, and one who is a mother who is trying to get away from her past. So I really love Shadow of the Gods. As I mentioned, Hunger of the Gods became my most anticipated read of the year, and so I was very excited when NetGalley and the publisher Orbit sent me a review copy. Thank you so much. And I tore into this book. I buddy read it with Patrick and Ian the reader, and I was sharing my thoughts with them throughout the read. And so the question is, did Hunger of the Gods meet my expectations? Yes and no. I will say right off the bat that I did not like Hunger of the Gods as much as Shadow of the Gods. I do think that it suffers from middle book syndrome, and there were just some things that I felt could have been condensed or cut out. But that being said, the story that John Gwynne is telling here is very exciting. It is very captivating. I'm in love with this world. I'm in love with these characters. And the middle and end of this book are explosive. The ending of this book single-handedly raised it from a 4-star to a 4.5 star in just the space of, 2 or 3 chapters, because I was just blown away. John Gwynne is well known for his action sequences, and here they are also very good. I will say, though, that unlike in Shadow of the Gods, where I felt the urgency of every single action sequence, I felt that in Hunger of the Gods, sometimes the action sequences felt as if they were in the book, because he was like, we haven't had an action sequence for a little bit, so I have to have these people fight these other people so that there is more action. And that tends to be action that I kind of glaze over in my head, even though it is still really well written and exciting. If I feel like the fight is there just for the sake of having a battle, then I'm less interested. And I felt like in Shadow of the Gods, pretty much all of the fighting felt like it had stakes, and I didn't feel that for every battle in this book, so that was a bit of a negative. But the actual writing of the battles remains fantastic. John Gwynne introduced 2 more POVs in this book, and they're both from the villain's perspective, and I think adding that extra perspective of what's going on with the villains is very interesting and well done. Particularly one of the new POVs I felt really added a lot of understanding of what's going on with this world. The plot reveals in this book continue to be well done. The slow unraveling of the history of the world and how these characters have to completely recontextualize themselves in lieu of what they thought they understood about the world and where their place fits in it. And as the world is constantly expanding and things are very rapidly changing for all of our characters, they have to come to terms with that very quickly, make very important decisions with not enough information, with not enough time to make these decisions, and having to come to grips with what type of person they are and how they want to be known is, I thought, very effectively done here. I will say that the characters that returned from the first book are expertly done. In the first book, there was one POV that I didn't fall in love with until like 2/3 into the book, and if I had a weakness of Shadow of the Gods, it would be that POV doesn't really kick into gear until later on. I did not have that problem in this book at all. I thought all 3 POVs had done the legwork from Shadow of the Gods to be very, very captivating in this book. The character work continues to be outstanding. I love all of these characters. Even the characters that I don't like, I feel are very well defined. I've heard some people say that the names are too similar, or that there are too many characters that are similar types, like Stoic Warrior or whatever, and I could see that being a problem for some, because it is hard to differentiate types of characters when they are very similar, like stock characters. But what I think John Gwynne excels at is giving each individual one of these characters a little piece of something that is only them. And so you do feel some sort of attachment to all of them. Like for instance, the Bloodsworn is this group of 40-something ragtag warriors that are just, running around killing people, and they can be hard to differentiate in the hands of a less skilled author. But I think John Gwynne does really well where even though a character might just be like a warrior, he gives them something more to have a sense of that inner life that makes minor characters really jump off the page. It reminds me a lot of A Song of Ice and Fire, where George R. R. Martin obviously puts a lot of time into the main characters, but even the small characters really pop off the page, and I feel like you really get a good sense of those minor characters. And I think that's the same with John Gwynne here too, so that I constantly felt invested in everybody's fate. When even a minor character died, I felt something. I was always like, oh man, I like that guy, or oh, she was looking like she was going to be pretty cool, or whatever it was. There was no deaths that rang hollow to me, which I think that in a book that has such a large supporting cast of warrior characters, to feel something every time is a good sign. As I said before, the conclusion of this book is explosive. I want the third book right now. I'm upset that I have to wait. And for those who don't know, there was a tragedy in John Gwynne's life recently. His daughter sadly passed away, and I have to imagine the third book will be delayed because of that, which take all the time that you need after something like that. Obviously, I can't imagine. But that being said, the end of this book is a cliffhanger to end all cliffhangers, and so if you are somebody who doesn't want to wait that long for the next installment, I would maybe recommend waiting until there's at least a release date for the third book, or until the third book is out and you can just binge the trilogy. But I had a great time with this book. It is really good. I can't wait to dive into John Gwynne's back catalog, which I've heard such great things about, and I will be waiting for the third book with bated breath. However, I do have some criticisms of this book, and that is why it will not be a full 5 stars for me. The first problem that I have with this book is that I read it at the same time as reading Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie, and that was a poor choice in retrospect, because first of all, it's because Last Argument of Kings is just a spectacular book, but also because there is a new villain POV in this book that is trying to consciously emulate Glocta from Joe Abercrombie's series, and it's not as if that character is poorly written. And I think if I had read it with some distance from First Law, I would have maybe liked it better. But because I was reading them at the same time, and Joe Abercrombie just did this same inner monologue character much better, this character annoyed me when he would do it, because it felt like when Brandon Sanderson has a character say some humor, and then another character is like, wow, you're so witty and funny. And you're like, well, I don't know that character was that witty and funny. You're just telling me he is. That's how I felt about this character, which is that they thought they were very funny in their own head. Like, they were like, haha, I am so witty and clever, and I just never found them to be that witty and clever. And it doesn't help that the character is a scumbag, which they're supposed to be a scumbag. But this POV does get better over time. I think once I got used to it, I think later on in the book, John Gwynne gets a better sense of this character's inner monologue, and it gets better, it improves in time. I think if I'd read this book at another point in time, I might have not have even noticed, but comparing the two, it was a noticeable weakness to the book. The other problem I have with this book, and this is probably my main problem with it, the biggest problem that I had, is that there are a ton of blood feuds. Now, a blood feud sounds like something that you would understand just by saying it, but just in case you're not sure what a blood feud is, a blood feud, especially in like Norse society, would be where somebody killed like your family member or your spouse, or somebody close to you, and then you would vow to kill them. Right? Sounds straightforward. But the amount of blood feuding in this book in particular basically need a chart. I mean, there are so many. I felt like that Charlie Day meme where he's like with all of the stuff on the board, because that's what you needed to keep track of all the blood feuding in this book. There's one point in this book where I counted 3 separate characters wanted to kill one same character, and these 3 other characters were like in totally different storylines, or like from totally different areas, and they all wanted to kill this one character, and then that character wanted to kill one of them, and then also this other character, and then that character wanted to kill this character, and then this character hated that character, and then that character. Well, see, I'm going down the rabbit hole already. So it just got very exhausting, and some of those blood feuds are dealt with in this book, but for the most part, it seems like it's setting up a lot of reasons people want to kill each other in the final book, which I think I anticipate just absolutely loving the final book after all the legwork that this book did. But it did get exhausting where it's like almost every other chapter somebody's like, well, I swear to kill him, and I swear to kill her. And it just, man, it just grated on me. It's like, dude, can somebody get over this once in a while, or can we stop having everybody kill each other's relatives? Which brings me to a smaller problem with this book, which is that it did feel as if while the world itself is expanding and we're learning a lot more about the magic and about the gods and about the politics of the world, the coincidence of how everybody is related to each other and how they keep running into different groups and how that group knows this group and how this group has a sister that's with this group, and then that group goes to a place, and then that group also happens to be there. It just feels like all these people constantly bumbling and fumbling their way into each other is too coincidental for me based on how large the world seems to be. So that was a minor issue. And then I've seen other reviews mention this, but there's a lot of traveling from point A to point B and then doing a thing and then going to point C and then doing a thing and then going to point D. And so all of these things combined made it feel a lot like a middle book syndrome type problem. And if I didn't love the series as much, like if I didn't like John Gwynne's writing style or the way that he deals with characters or just the overall plot and world, I think that that would have frustrated me a lot more. But as it stands, this was still a minor issue. It's just something that I noticed. I felt like there was a lot of traveling. I think if the book had been shortened by like even 40 or 50 pages, I think it would have been a 5-star for me, hands down. Without a doubt, 40 or 50 pages of just cutting down on like blood feuds and traveling would have done a lot for this book for me. But yeah, overall this was a highly positive experience. I really enjoyed reading this book. I hope more people pick up John Gwynne. I want to talk about him more. I know he's getting more popular lately, but I think he really deserves it. He seems like a very nice guy, and the way that he writes books is just so, it just flows so well. Like the prose isn't flowery, but it's not quite on the Brandon Sanderson level of like window dressing either, but it just lulls you into the story in such a great way. And so yeah, I highly recommend both this book and The Shadow of the Gods, and I can't wait for that third book. That's my review. Thank you so much for watching. Take it easy, everybody.